So my name is Barbara Kellerman, and I'm here to talk to you along with my invisible colleague, Todd Pittinsky, who's my co-author, about Leaders Who Lust, which is the title of the book, but it's also a more general theme. So what do we mean when we say leaders who lust? Let me hasten to add, this is not just lust in a conventional sense, as in lust for power or lust for sex, which we do talk about, but it is lust for more than that. It is lust for 6 different goals or needs or wants or wishes that leaders want to have satisfied that we explore in the book, Leaders Who Lust. By the way, just for the record, this is the book. Hope you can all see this. So as we define the word lust, it is different from the standard need for power or achievement. It is an insatiable drive or quest or hunger for these 6 different goals or achievements or needs. First is power, then is money, then is sex, then is success, and then are 2 more that we call legitimacy and legacy. I'll try to explain what those mean further in a moment. Let me just say that lust is distinguishable again from the standard idea of leaders want certain things. So here's actually how we define lust, and I'm going to read to you literally text from the book, so you have an understanding of how it differs from these standard quests. So we define lust as a psychological drive that produces intense wanting, even desperately needing to obtain an object or to secure a circumstance. When the object has been obtained or the circumstance secured, there is relief, but only briefly, temporarily. Lust implies a fervor to acquire or achieve or consume that is out of the ordinary, that is extraordinary. It is that extreme. So, leaders who lust, this lusting aspect explains a lot about why these particular leaders stand out. Again, they are not ordinary, they are extraordinary. The lust drives them to achieve things, to get things that never happens under more ordinary circumstances. By the way, we use the word lust as a value-free indicator. We do not mean to convey good or bad. It is not a prescriptive term. It is a descriptive term, which distinguishes how we look at leadership more generally.
Well, I wonder, you gave 6 categories of lust. Can you share some of the names or some of the actors that you think illustrate some of the lust? So who are some of the people that you meet in this book?
As I think I indicated, there are 6 different categories of lust. And again, we do not present cases, we tell stories. And there are 2 stories to indicate each of the different 6 types of lust. I'm not going to name, in other words, all 12, but I will give you some indicators. So for example, lust for power is indicated by Roger Ailes and Xi Jinping. So I happen to be a bit of a student of Xi, and I can tell you that when he first came into power in China, he's of course president of China, in 2012, 2013, his lust for power was not nearly as much in evidence then as it has been in the last year or 2 or 3. He has consolidated and demonstrated his lust for power in a way that was really quite hard to envision just a few years ago. Lust for money is exemplified by 2 Americans who have had for many decades enormous amounts of money, but who manifestly have not been content with the amounts of money that they have, and they acquire more money, not for any obvious reason, but because they can't stop, which is of course how lust is defined. One of these men is Warren Buffett, who has for some years now given effectively all of his money away, who lives extremely simply and has been very well known for his unostentatious tastes lifelong. But he can't stop making money. He can't stop trying to make more money than he already has. That's what we mean by lust. Lust for success, lust for sex, illustrated by two names that'll both be familiar, I think, to listeners of this blog. One is John F. Kennedy Jr., about whom I could go on. The other is Silvio Berlusconi, the Italian, long-lived Italian politician, about whom I could also go on. Let me just jump now to the end of the book and say that the lust for legacy, which is to leave a permanent imprint, and which is, again, lifelong, unstoppable. The stories we tell are one of Bill and Melinda Gates, equal partners in philanthropy. They have changed the world of philanthropy. And I don't just mean Bill Gates and his attempt to become very, and not successful attempt to become very involved in finding a vaccine for the coronavirus, but also Melinda Gates, whose role in this has been from the start of their foundation, equal partner to Bill. And the last character in the book is a man who most of you will have heard of by the name of George Soros, a very interesting, not entirely happy tale of a man who wanted to change the world, very specifically Eastern Europe. He's Hungarian by birth, after the fall of the wall, and who succeeded, but only to a very modest extent. A very interesting, convoluted, sad, and also a sad story, but also one of vaulting ambition, some of which is to be eminently commended.
Professor Kellerman, you're on the faculty of a university which aspires or claims to train leaders, global leaders, excellent leaders. What does your analysis in this book suggest for, or how would you describe the leadership, quote unquote, industry, and how does your analysis in this book, what does it suggest for the many books, programs, the leadership industry?
Well, it's a great question. That is a question about what I call the leadership industry. My books about the leadership industry, maybe most obviously a book I wrote 2 years ago called Professionalizing Leadership, has not made me the most popular girl on the leadership campus. I've been quite critical of what I call the leadership industry, and this book, Leaders Who Lust, relates to that criticism in several ways. Perhaps the most obvious is that lust, it is not something that can be taught. You cannot eat, for all the programs and institutes and centers and courses and workshops and seminars dedicated to learning how to lead, lust, while as we point out, is extremely important. Alas, it cannot be taught in a classroom. I cannot teach any student of mine, no matter how brilliant a teacher I might be, how to lust. It could be an innate quality. It is in any case a quality, if not innate, that is at some early point in life acquired, and one that cannot be inculcated from the outside. So the book, Leaders Who Lust, reflects on the leadership industry, but it does so in a way that I have to say is implicitly critical, because we are suggesting that materials, ideas, concepts that are not taught in a classroom, that are not part of the leadership industry, get left out of the discussion. We have to think that Leaders Who Lust, as I implied, are really, really important. The fact that the subject has been, if not deliberately avoided, certainly not included in the leadership curriculum, is a commentary on an industry that is dedicated to teaching people how to lead ostensibly quickly and easily. Unlike the professions where leadership education is a large part of what is supposed to be accomplished, the educational part, in becoming a professional, whether it's medicine or law or teaching or engineering, by the way, even in the vocations. In leadership learning, the educational component is largely left out. And I would argue, and I believe my colleague Todd Pittinsky would argue, and my co-author Todd Pittinsky would argue, that anything that is left out because it is descriptive rather than prescriptive is, to coin a phrase or not coin a phrase, a crying shame.
Finally, looking forward, do you think, certainly history has many compelling examples of leaders who lust, and the contemporary moment, looking to the future, do you expect that leaders who lust will continue to play such an animating role in global affairs or domestic, or do you expect that we'll come to a kinder, gentler place in leadership?
So final commentary on leaders who lust: power, money, sex, success, legitimacy, and legacy. That's not going away. You know, I always teach systemically. That is, I never teach, never talk, never write anymore about leaders or leadership. I always reference what I call the leadership system. That system is actually quite simple: leaders, followers, and the contexts within which leaders and followers are embedded. So 3 equal pieces. Leaders, you know, we're leader-centric. We obsess about leaders. They're no more important than are the followers, and together they're no more important than the context within which they're embedded. The reason leaders who lust will stay around forevermore till the end of time, this is by no means a historical analysis, because at heart here, we're talking about the nature of the human condition. As I write and as I teach, what changes is the context. So for example, the impact of social media, of changing technologies on the dynamics of leadership and followership are profound. The contextual changes are profound. But what does not change is the human condition, which is precisely why the conception of leaders who lust, why leaders who lust literally as well as figuratively, will be around forevermore.